Bye. All right, well, thank you all for coming. I'm Brighid Dwyer, and I'm the director of the program of Intergroup Relations, and I have the privilege of teaching you in Global, so I'm glad about that. Yes. It's great. We have a good time. So today I'm doing a presentation on, the title is Emerging as Hispanic Serving, so the role of Hispanic serving institutions in U.S. higher education and the landscape. So I guess the goals of today's presentation are to really talk about these couple of questions. So what are Hispanic serving institutions? What is the U.S. higher education landscape? And what relevance do HSIs have on this higher education landscape? So to back up a little bit more too, I have done a lot of research. So my work here is on intergroup dialogue and intergroup relations and a lot of research pieces. And before that, I was doing a lot of work on Hispanic serving institutions and emerging HSIs. So that's kind of my background, and I've done interviews with students about their experiences. So I'm glad to have the opportunity to talk about that. A note about language. So the terminology is Hispanic serving institutions, but more of the common terminology is to use Latina, Latino. So I will use them kind of interchangeably, but the terminology comes from a long time ago when HSIs were established. So just if you're wondering about that, just throw that out there. Okay, so what are some ways in which the higher education landscape is changing? And I throw that out to you all. When you think about higher education and kind of the big issues that people talk about when they're applying to college or that parents are worried about, what are some of the things that you think of? Yep.
Probably diversity in the campus.
Diversity in the campus, okay, all right. What else?
The cost.
The cost, yep.
Oh, yeah, that's
absolutely, the cost. Yep.
Oh, you should have said it.
And I'm hearing a lot of, am I going to be able to get a job?
Am I going to, yep.
Particularly in the liberal arts.
Yep, yep, yep.
Probably distance from home.
Distance from home, okay.
Because I know like when I was applying, I just stayed around here.
Okay. Yeah, so proximity, certainly too. Okay. Anything else?
Return on investment.
ROI, all right. Kind of goes along with jobs, right? And cost, so. Okay. So these are some of the pieces that, kind of looking across the literature, these are some of the things that are really talked about. So changing demographics, certainly, so diversity, but I think that also gets to proximity, talking distance from home, and income of people who are applying, the rising costs, certainly. Millennials is a big piece, kind of what is your generation doing? How are they different? How do we serve them in a really effective way? Sexual assault, we've taught a lot of trainings for those of us who are staff and faculty. I think there's been a lot of conversations in student organizations and a lot of awareness about sexual assault on campus, about mental health. So kind of how are we serving students who are coming to campus with different mental health concerns? Yeah?
So I just want to clarify on that. So that's not that there's more or less sexual assault, it's more awareness?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And internationalization. So how are we thinking about our presence is not beyond sort of the US context, but also in terms of international context, and how are we serving students who are coming from international, from different countries? So those are some of the big things.
The institutional response
Okay.
and rising reporting and institutional response to such.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Okay. So we're going to focus on changing demographics. So I think Hispanic serving institutions and emerging Hispanic serving institutions is a way that you can talk about all of these particular pieces, but with a highlight on this particular piece of changing demographics. So, so the importance of the changing demographics is highlighted by AAC&U, which is the Association for American Colleges and Universities, has come out within the last couple of years talking about a liberal education, and part of their liberal education, they really talk about this idea of inclusive excellence. So they say that one of the things that's imperative to a liberal education is to be inclusive. And so they define, part of their definition of a liberal education is one that embraces a diversity of people for the opportunity to learn with and from diverse peers is also a critical element of educational excellence. This commitment to diversity and equity in all forms is what we mean by inclusive excellence. So it's a part of the national conversation when we're talking about what's really good, what's really important about getting a college degree. It's integral to the college experience. And there's national conversations happening and saying that this is something that we really need to be paying attention to and really promoting our students to be prepared for as they go out into the workforce. So as we talk about sort of the changing demographics, I wanted to talk about, again, Hispanic serving institutions. And these two organizations, HACU, the Hispanic Association of Colleges and Universities, and Excelencia in Education, are sort of the two leading bodies that are really talking about HSIs, doing a lot of research, supporting Hispanic serving institutions. So a lot of the information that you'll see next will come from these two sources. So does anybody have a sense of what Hispanic serving institutions are? You know a bit, so, but I'm gonna not call on you right now. Any sense? Anyone take a stab, or when you hear the term, what do you think? Nobody's willing to venture a guess?
I mean,
So it probably has something to do with Hispanic or Latino serving and in colleges and universities or institutions, right?
like when you say Hispanic serving institution, I feel like that means, I don't know, they accept us? Like, I don't know.
Okay, it's a good start. But accept far in terms of admission or welcome, or what do you mean?
Probably both.
Okay, great. We'll keep that in mind because I think that's an important piece. So I'm going to watch a short video that should hopefully speak to some of these pieces, and I want you to keep these questions in mind. So think about, what did you learn? Hopefully something, since we don't have a lot of information about HSIs. What is the definition of an HSI? What are the characteristics of HSIs? And would you consider Villanova an HSI? Okay. So. Oh, really?
What happened?
Well, it go into a different, it's going to Internet Explorer as opposed to
playing it from the slide?
yeah. Okay.
House Resolution
Okay, why is this not?
737, which encourages the establishment of the week of September 20th as National Hispanic Serving Institutions Week. Hispanic serving institutions are degree-granting institutions with full-time equivalent.
Okay, so we're listening because I see the video, but it's not up here. So let me back it up so you can listen to it a little more.
I accept. Record.
Without objection.
Speaker, I give myself as much time as I may consume.
Someone's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in support of House Resolution 737, which encourages the establishment of the week of September 20th as National Hispanic Serving Institutions Week. Hispanic serving institutions are degree-granting institutions with full-time equivalent undergraduate enrollments that are at least 25% Hispanic. In 1990, there were only 135 recognized Hispanic serving institutions. Today, there are 268 such institutions, educating more than half of all Hispanic college and university students in the nation. Hispanic Americans face multiple obstacles in access and completion of higher education. While Hispanic high school graduates are more likely than their white peers to go on to college, they are less likely to complete their bachelor's degree because of issues linked to poverty, immigration, and enrollment status. Hispanic serving institutions play a crucial role in addressing these issues and obstacles while remaining committed to educating underserved students across the country. Working to increase enrollment and retention, Hispanic serving institutions have created many innovative programs. At El Camino College in California, their first-year experience class has persistence rates 10 to 30% higher than the rest of the student body. The program provides a learning community through linked classes and a team of instructors and counselors who work together to increase student success. At the University of Texas in El Paso, deep relationships with the surrounding K-12 community schools have helped bridge a path for students to attain a higher education and be prepared for college-level work. Hispanic serving institutions continue to produce extremely accomplished members of our society. Their alumni include members of Congress and some of the President's closest advisors in his cabinet. Lastly, it is important to note that September is Hispanic Heritage Month. This month celebrates the accomplishments and contributions of Hispanics in the United States while honoring Hispanic culture in the country. It is appropriate that we include Hispanic serving institutions in this honor. I thank Representative Grijalva for his leadership in bringing this important resolution forward. Mr. Speaker, I ask my colleagues to support this important resolution and join me in my commendation of our country's Hispanic serving institutions. I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves the balance of his time. The gentleman from Pennsylvania.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I might consume.
The gentleman's recognized.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of House Resolution 737, a resolution expressing the sense of the House of Representatives that a National Hispanic Serving Institutions Week should be established. I want to thank the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Grijalva, for introducing this resolution. Mr. Grijalva recognizes the important role that HSIs play for all post-secondary students, especially minority students. HSIs and their student body are very diverse. The community of HSIs include 2- and 4-year institutions and public and private institutions. In 2007, 46% of the students enrolled in HSIs were Hispanic, and the remaining 44% were a diverse mix of students from various ethnicities and backgrounds. Even with this diversity of the student body, geographical location, and population served, the principal mission of all of these institutions is to provide a quality education. HSIs deserve recognition for the contribution they make to the education community and the nation. While comprising less than 10% of the nation's institutions of higher education, HSIs educate over 2/3 of Hispanic students enrolled in colleges and universities. Most HSIs do not have access to the resources or endowment income that other institutions can draw on. However, they are still successful in their effort to provide a high-quality education, often to some of our most disadvantaged students. And we have consistently worked to improve the nation's support for Hispanic serving institutions. Just last Congress, the Higher Education Opportunity Act, the reauthorization bill for the Higher Education Act, included a provision that created a new program designed to allow these students, these institutions, to improve their graduate and professional programs. We also provided more flexibility to HSIs through the broadening of uses of Title V funds to include activities like the development of articulation agreements, the development of distance learning technologies, and providing additional financial literacy counseling to students and families. It is important that we recognize the contribution of HSIs and their graduates by celebrating HSI Week. The number of HSIs increases every year. From 2006 to 2007, 13 new institutions qualified as an HSI. These institutions provide an ever-increasing number of students with a high-quality education and leadership skills for the future, and they deserve recognition for such. Mr. Speaker, I urge my colleagues to support this resolution, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Okay, so what did you learn? Some of it maybe have been confusing. If so, say so. But what did you learn?
No, let me take it in.
What's that?
I said I had to take it in first.
Okay.
No, I'm thinking. Stop.
What did you learn? What is your name? Mike? What did you learn, Mike?
I learned that like the early 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
They've kind of been rapidly kind of increasing
Mm-hmm.
like, as time goes by, and now they're really prominent.
Yeah, so they've been increasing a lot over time, and now they're pretty prominent. Okay, yeah, what else?
Was it at least 25% Hispanic acceptance? Or
To qualify to be an HSI, you have to have 25% undergraduate full-time enrollment.
The part I missed is they said that the retention rate, that Hispanics were less likely to complete the BA, but were accepted at a higher rate than, there was some piece before that, than their white peers, something like that.
Oh, I heard that part.
Did you, yeah.
It was like something he was talking about that Hispanics have like, I guess like the capability of like working in like higher education facilities, but that they can't get accepted. Not because they can't get accepted, they're probably more likely to get accepted than their white peers.
You
But
heard the
because
same
of
thing.
stuff like immigration
Right.
and money and things like that, it's what stops them.
So I think I don't remember the exact phrasing that he used, but because the population is changing at such a fast rate, there's a lot more Hispanic Latino students in high schools that are now going to college. And so if we look kind of proportionally at acceptance rates, they're going up, but the completion rates are not proportional to the acceptance rates, is essentially the argument that's out there. So we understand now that they are 25%. Did you learn anything about the characteristics of HSIs? Anything else about, other than?
Is it kind of like, I feel like they celebrate Latino culture,
Okay.
and they're really like welcoming and opening, and they're trying to give Latinos who have barriers into getting into some institutions, accepting them and trying to get as much money and funding as they can. And that's what it seemed like they
Sure.
were doing. They were trying to raise awareness and probably trying to get donations. Is what it seemed like.
Okay. Yeah. So there's this. We'll talk about this in a little bit, but there is a funding piece, and it's connected to something called Title V funding, which is a grant. But yeah, absolutely. So there's a serving part. You were talking a lot about kind of being welcoming and accepting, and so that's the sort of serving piece of this. So I will give you the information. So the answers to the questions I was asking. So yes, HSIs are institutions with 25% or more Hispanic or Latino undergraduate full-time equivalent enrollment. Okay. The number of HSIs changes year to year, again, because of the changing demographic, and that's why we've seen a lot of growth. There's more now than there were before, and we'll talk more specifically in a moment about how many there are now. And institutions can apply through a competitive process to receive Title V funding. So once you reach that 25% marker, you can compete for this grant, which is a capacity building grant. So it's something that can help with your infrastructure. It's something that you have to make a proposal, and it's basically something that is going to support the well-being of the students. So it might be a tutoring center. It might be saying that we don't have we need a new building because we're running out of space. So it's tailored to the needs of that particular institution, but it's something that's going to help them serve their students better.
But is Title V just for Latino?
It's just for Hispanic serving institutions. So it was created to assist HSIs to expand the educational opportunities and improve attainment, degree attainment of Hispanic students. So this is a map that shows where the HSIs are now. So the orange is the HSI. So there are 370 as of 2012, 2013. And so these are the different states. Anything surprising, or is that kind of where you thought they might be?
I thought that's where they might be because that's where the most Latinos are. Definitely New York, Puerto Rico, of course.
oh yeah,
Definitely like Texas,
yeah, Arizona,
West Coast.
California.
What's anything surprising in this map?
I'm surprised Pennsylvania's not.
that was the
Okay.
I mean, at least in Philadelphia.
Right? Yeah.
The rest,
Maybe they were like little orange spots. Maybe I don't know.
Okay. What about the middle of the country? Is that at all surprising?
I'm not surprised. I like
The middle?
Indiana.
The middle.
A little surprised by Indiana.
Indiana? Okay. All right. Okay. All right. So we'll get into the more specifics. So So HSIs are important because, and we heard this in the video, so I'm going to reiterate a little bit of what the speaker was saying. But they make up 11%. I think he said almost 10 at the time. So the video was a 2009 video. So again, we've seen in the last 6 years the growth. So they make up 11% of U.S. colleges and universities. They serve 69% of all Hispanic or Latino students in higher education across all universities. If you think of anybody who identifies as Hispanic or Latino, HSIs serve almost 60% of all of the Latino students in this country who are in colleges. So that's a profound amount. That's a huge percentage of students. That's a huge percentage. That's more than half of the Latino population. So this is they're very, very relevant. Especially, again, thinking about how the demographics are changing in this country. They're very, very relevant. There are many HSIs local to Villanova, but Villanova is, so answer the question. So Villanova an HSI? No, because we are not 25%.
We're like 5%.
We are about, would you say 7.5?
7 and 8%.
Yep.
7 and 8.
Mm-hmm. And so HSIs are also important because they embody this inclusive excellence that I talked about earlier. And really, again, in light of today being a freedom school, really embody MLK's legacy in terms of inclusion and service to all. So enrollment at HSIs, again, we heard this in the video, but HSIs are diverse. So it's not just that they serve a lot of Latino students, but also they enroll 28% of all Asian students. Students who of all the students in college enrolled in colleges and universities that identify as Asian, 28% of them attend an institution that is classified as an HSI. Same thing, African American, 16%, American Indian, 14%, and they serve 10% of all of the white students who go to college. 10% of those white students attend an HSI, right? So they're definitely important to the particular population of Latino students, but also quite relevant across all racial demographics. So there are a couple different lists of HSIs, and there's not anything particularly official. So I told you about those two different governing bodies. So there's Excelencia in Education, and there's HACU, and they both keep different lists of HSIs. And so HACU is a membership-based organization, and so a lot of their reporting is about who is a part of their membership. And again, the numbers are changing every year. And some of the lists consider whether or not the institution has a Title V grant, and rather than just their particular demographic. So there's different lists that are kept in different places. So there's not necessarily a consistent number across the board that we can point to and say, this is the exact number of HSIs that exist. So on one of the lists, we actually have Esperanza College of Eastern University, which is in Philadelphia. So on one of the lists, and I think it's because they don't have a Title V grant. I couldn't say that for certain, but I think that that's the case. They don't appear on the list, and so on the map that I showed, but in some categories, they are listed as an HSI. So that's the only one in our region. If we look at New Jersey, these are the different colleges and universities in New Jersey that are HSIs. Anything surprising here, or anything, I don't know how familiar you are with New Jersey, but if we look at kind of 2-year or 4-year, look at those percentages.
There's more 2-year ones,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's more people going to the 2-year than there are going to the 4-year.
Absolutely. So, and that's kind of consistent with what the data show and what we know about Latino and Hispanic populations that tend to be lower income. So you typically you're and have lower, the parents tend to have lower college education, so more likely to go to a 2-year institution. So this is consistent with what we know about higher education and higher going rates for Latino students. So this is New York. We have 9 CUNYs.
What's a CUNY?
City University of New York.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. And then all of these institutions. One of the SUNY schools, so one of the state institutions.
I never heard of that. Boricua College.
Mm-hmm. That is actually, that's a very interesting HSI, because most of the HSIs have evolved to become Hispanic serving institutions. So they exist because of the change in demographics. So they were established, many of them, as predominantly or historically white institutions, but they have evolved to now serve Hispanics by virtue of their demographics. Boricua is one of, I think, two HSIs that was established for the explicit purpose of educating Puerto Ricans. And so it's in New York City. Yep. Yeah, I think it's in the Bronx. I think it's in the South Bronx. And so it has a very different history and a very different way of serving. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But if we think about what service means, if you're established to serve one population versus established to serve another population, the way in which you approach your students could be very different. So emerging Hispanic serving institutions is, again, another category that I've mentioned. And so they're institutions that are sort of on the verge of becoming Hispanic serving institutions. So these are sort of the ones that we watch out for to see, what's going to happen, when are they going to become HSIs. And so they've been identified as institutions that have between 15 and 24% Hispanic full-time enrollment. And like I said, it's really kind of about the place at which the institutional culture starts to change. So once we reach this place where groups are more balanced, that we have close to 40 to 60% of a population, sort of majority and minority groups, we start to have a different really shift in the culture. I think there's a lot more equity at that point. The reason that we have 25% as a number for HSIs, it kind of seems arbitrary in some ways, but according to Cantor's research on critical mass theory, she talks about that 25% marker is kind of a range where things start to shift a little more. It's not that it's completely balanced, but there's sort of a shift in culture, and that we say, oh, okay, well, there's a kind of a critical mass here. There's enough people of a particular group to make a difference, to start to change the culture of an institution. So that's sort of the background about that. So remember the map that we saw of, I'll go back actually. This is the map of Hispanic serving institutions. So think about the idea about emerging Hispanic serving institutions. Picture in your mind, what do you think that's going to look like? I'm going to go forward to that map. But picture what states are going to be added to the map here. So all of these orange states here are the states that have institutions that are between that 15 and 24% marker. Anything surprising about this map, or is this what you expected?
I kind of expected it.
Kind of, yeah. So so Pennsylvania pops on the map, right? That's one thing we can notice. What else stands out? Oklahoma, yeah.
I just say that because my cousins go there.
Okay. Yeah. Anything else? Some down south states, yeah. There's a lot more happening in the South, right? And it's not necessarily something that we typically talk about. I mean, I think a lot of times we talk about sort of Florida, we talk about the states that border Mexico, but there's a large growth across the country of Latino students, and so we can see that representation in the map.
I have a question.
Yes.
Was Nevada there before?
It was not. No. Mm-hmm. Yep. So these are the emerging HSIs in Pennsylvania. Any surprises there?
I've never heard of any of these.
Okay. So do you know where these are?
I know where Houston is.
Because I know where Reading is. I don't know
Okay. So
I know Reading, but that's a Penn State, like.
yeah, branch.
So is it that one that's like it's the branch, like 2 there and 2 in Maine? Or is Hazleton like 4 years you can stay?
Hazleton is a 4-year campus, but it is. I'm going to see if I can actually get it up there. Oh, why can I see this and you all can't?
Penn State colleges sometimes do 2-year main campus, 2 years.
Sure.
Like a branch.
So what I'm looking at that you all probably can't see is, well, I know you can't see it, but this is a map of where those colleges and universities are. So they're all kind of in that Reading area. So they're all sort of the middle. This is Reading Area Community College. This is Penn State Hazleton. This is Lehigh Carbon Community College. This is Northampton Community College. And as a point of reference, here's Villanova. And Philadelphia would be right about out here. Right here. So they're all kind of in this area. And this is sort of a little known fact that now in the Amish country, which is not far from there are more Latinos than there are Amish. So given, again, the way in which our state is changing in terms of demographics, it's not surprising that that is where these HSIs or emerging HSIs are popping up. But again, it's something to just kind of take note of and to watch. Okay, so there are 26 HSIs in New York and 11 in New Jersey. Okay. So again, emerging HSIs are relevant because of changing demographics. And going back to your point, Curlin, it goes to this idea between Hispanic serving and Hispanic enrolling. So you talked a lot about, I think that they're institutions where you'd feel welcome, and but a lot of the definition of Hispanic serving institution is actually that it's a Hispanic enrolling institution. So the questions then become, how are students being served? So when we think about that, we think about the services, we think about the interactions the students are having, we think about the mission. So when you noticed Borico College, that's an important one to recognize because it was founded with the explicit purpose of educating Puerto Rican students. Its orientation towards its students is going to be very different. It's going to have a particular context and way in which approaching its student body that's going to support them and understand where they're coming from. Whereas if we have other institutions that are changing and evolving just because of demographics, are their missions changing in the same way? Are they really outwardly showing on their website that they're supportive of Hispanic and Latino students? Do local communities know that that's a resource that's in their backyard? So these are the questions that institutions need to be wrestling with as they're thinking about that. So, and I want to throw this out next for us to talk about. So if we know that Villanova is not an HSI, but if we think about it, we're at 7.5, so we're not bad, but we're not there yet. We're not nearly at 25%. But if we think about it, in 10 years or 20 years, hopefully we'll be there before then. But if we think about that, how would Villanova need to change? What are some of the things in which we would need to think about? How are some of the ways in which we need to serve students? So I invite you for conversation on this piece. So these are some, I think, kind of areas that I've touched on and mentioned. But talk to me. What do you think?
I didn't hear nothing about Hispanic Heritage Month when it was.
That's true.
Okay.
Um,
So having an awareness of Hispanic Heritage Month and celebrating it.
Something big in February for African American Month.
Right.
So there's that.
Like embracing other cultures as well kind of makes it more not only open to like just Hispanics or just like African Americans or just American Indians. It would be kind of like by creating an open space for all, it kind of it's like a trickle down effect where every group increases.
So it's highlighting multiple groups, so showing that we care and we value different groups, various groups. Okay,
We value
great.
diversity.
Yeah, value diversity.
I would think financial aid,
Mm-hmm.
continue to be
Right.
an issue.
Right.
It's for everybody.
Right. So when we think about Villanova's current mission, what do we know about it? I know at least one of you is a freshman, so you've taken ACS and maybe thinking about kind of this Augustinian, right? You're taking Augustinian, is it Culture and Society? Is that what it stands for?
Culture seminar.
Cultural seminar, okay. So St. Augustine's in the
I
title.
thought he was crazy, so I don't know. That book, The Confessions, did you read it?
I read it.
Didn't you think he was crazy?
I mean,
Well, not like what he did was really good, but I meant like it was like a telenovela. Like he was crying, ripping out his hair. It was a good book though.
But if we think about, so not just St. Augustine, but also thinking about us as an Augustinian institution, what are some of the values, right? So if we think about, we always hear unitas, caritas, and veritas, right? So truth, unity, and love. If we think about that as that sort of the foundation of Villanova, are there ways in which we can pull that out? Or are there ways in which you would like to see, maybe I'm guessing that you all don't have the mission memorized. I don't. But are there ways in which you would like to see things highlighted?
Maybe the unity, the Unitas.
The Unitas? Okay.
So I know like over the summer there's Unitas, and that we went.
That's a weekend.
The we yeah, but not that we were referred by our parents, but like as part of the AAP and Stokes program.
Mm-hmm.
So I would have never heard about it. So maybe if they sent like a letter or something.
Mm-hmm.
But then also I noticed that it was mostly minorities there at Unitas.
Okay.
Yeah. So they made sure like I don't think it was like one of like like how when the professors and the teachers would leave the room and they asked the kids questions. Like they made sure that they told like because it was like a lot of diversity and they made sure like that Villanova campus is not like that
Mm-hmm.
because it was because they were like it's like not like that at all, so you might not see what you were feeling or like it wouldn't be the same as it was during Unitas weekend.
Okay.
But it was like really cool to see. I mean, the diversity just from that. It was like what, like 250 people? 200,
Okay.
like 200 people, and there was like a good amount of diversity.
Mm-hmm. Well, letters are sent out, I think, to every single incoming freshman about Unitas. So a lot of people do know. A lot of people, people do know about it. But it is, again, it's a capacity issue as well. So there's only so many people that could come. But absolutely. But Steve, you've gone here, undergrad, master's, you work here. What are your thoughts about this?
In terms of
If Villanova, thinking about,
Villanova need to consider?
yeah.
Well, when you're thinking about the question of the mission, though, what I would ask the students was, when you think about Villanova, what are Villanova's biggest celebrations in a year?
Think about it, Service Day.
Okay.
Which one?
Both. Well, not MLK Day. MLK Day was like really small.
Okay.
Compared to
St. Thomas.
St. Thomas.
So thinking about the things we celebrate at the University, St. Thomas Villanova Day is one of the big celebrations we have.
Yeah.
So thinking of terms of what we do on that day and where the university goes, thinking in terms of service, is it kind of the ways in which the Villanovans do service? How might that change, or what does that look like when you consider if Villanova was becoming an emerging HSI where all of a sudden 25% of the university was Hispanic?
We definitely wouldn't. We would probably not go to. I don't know where everybody went, but
That's
I know
fine.
we went to. I went with LASO, which is the Latin American Student Organization. And we went to North Philly. No, we didn't. No, we went to like West Philly, and we went to help people. Like we did outside work, so we did paint.
Mm-hmm.
Their doors or like around. It was like weird because it was like.
So upper income, low income.
No, it was definitely low income,
okay.
but it was.
Latino, white.
No, they were African American.
Okay.
So I feel like we do help a lot with African Americans, but I'm not seeing much of a Latino. But during MLK Day, we did go to a bilingual charter school in
Mhm.
Northeast Philly.
Bilingual Spanish, bilingual
bilingual
Mandarin.
Spanish.
Okay.
It was for, and they were like about a Boricua school too. I forget what exactly it's called.
Okay.
It was a weird name.
Esperanza.
No, it wasn't
Esperanza.
Esperanza. It was
Something else.
yeah, it was something else.
So this, to your point, you're saying the service would change.
So if it was
The service sites
if we
might
were
change.
Serving, then maybe we would be serving the Latino community,
Okay.
and maybe that would help also with like awareness and giving back and things like that. 'Cause it also depends depends who you're giving back to. So
Mhm.
if you're giving back to people who are, I wouldn't say like you, but like like they were Latino, you shared some kind of like culture. Like it makes more it makes more of a difference. I feel like you feel like you're like serving your people in
Mhm.
some kind of way.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like you're doing a bigger impact because you're like, oh, like that little girl or boy, they could be like, I remember when I was in that situation
Right.
or something like that, and I hope they grow up to go to college or high school. So what we were doing, we were
So serving as a role model
yeah,
in
serving
many
as a role
ways.
model.
Okay.
We were establishing like their library. That's what we were doing.
Okay.
We didn't have a library, so we
Okay.
were like putting the call numbers in the system and labeling and stuff like that. That way they could be able to check out books in like the next year or so.
Okay. All right. So you agree? You think that's the
Yeah, I was
case?
thinking along the lines of if the university is an emerging HSI and thinking about the socioeconomic status of the Hispanic population in the United States being all over the map. But if you think of traditionally underrepresented students, you're thinking of people coming from a middle to lower socioeconomic status. So, but a lot of Villanovans are coming from a middle to high socioeconomic status. So they're thinking of where you describe as giving back and kind of remembering not having a library or remembering not having books and actually making the situation better. Most people in Villanova go to St. Thomas Villanova, they having never experienced that that level of poverty, that level of not having anything. So to them, it becomes more about them, and less about the student experiences and the students giving back. So that's one of the ways in which maybe the Villanova University might change. It's not the case for every student, but certainly be a different kind of thing. The second thing would be communications. How do all communications in Villanova come out? They tend to come out multilingual, or are they always in English?
Oh, they're always in English.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's why I never put my parents' emails down. I always on English.
Right. And also,
that would be a good idea. If like they had an option or something like that would be. You know how like sometimes you sign up for stuff and they'll be like what language you want, like English, Spanish.
right.
Or so like I'm pretty sure like for Asian students, some of their parents don't speak
Right.
English,
Oh,
or,
absolutely.
you know,
Yep.
they speak Chinese or Vietnamese or
Right.
Thai, some kind of dialect.
Right.
So they have it in different. Maybe like hire people.
Mhm.
Within the language department.
Right.
Organize that. That would be pretty cool. Think about that.
Yep.
That as an option.
So for communication, it's certainly the language, but also I think there's other pieces of communication too. So there's visual. Those are ways in which we have visual, right? We have printed materials, or we have websites that display who Villanova is. So I think too, saying what does Villanova look like? Can I see myself in Villanova? When I look at this brochure, when I look at the view book, can I see myself in Villanova?
When I look at the faculty.
When I look at the faculty,
That's
can I see myself in Villanova? Absolutely. When I look at the staff, when I come to campus, do I see myself at Villanova?
in positions of power.
Exactly.
Not just
Exactly.
staff faculty.
Right.
Who's the president? Who's
Right.
serving up at the
Right.
top level?
Right. Who's cleaning my room or cleaning the dining hall, and who's teaching my class? So.
That is good.
Mhm.
Because before I never thought I would ever go here.
Mhm.
Like, because I heard about it like probably like freshman year in high school. The people who like people I knew, like teachers or something like that, husbands, and you pass this campus and I was like, oh, I don't think I'm gonna go there. I never thought I would go here. And then I visited my senior year, and that's when I decided.
So why didn't you think you'd ever go here?
Well, I thought it was too hard to get into at first, and
Okay.
I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm smart enough to get in. And then I didn't. And then I thought, oh, it's not that diverse. But also, I went to a private high school where the majority were white girls, so it's kind of the same thing. So I felt like used to it anyway. But here is like more bigger numbers. Even though there was only like 100 girls in my class, we were pretty. You know everybody's name. Here you don't even know. I'm like, oh, who's that?
Right.
Like
Yeah,
in
it's
the
big.
South,
It's a bigger
so
campus,
maybe-
certainly. Yeah.
Yeah, but
But so what I'm hearing you say is that in some ways you're speaking to that point of communication. You couldn't see yourself in Villanova, right? You didn't have representations. You didn't have. I don't know. Maybe you didn't have people coming to your school saying this, or when you were a younger child, you didn't know people who came here. It wasn't accessible. And I know you're from Philly, right?
yeah, the Greater Philadelphia.
You're from the Greater Philadelphia area, so it's not like you're from Idaho or something, and we're not doing good recruiting in Idaho. But you're local,
I am
so
local, so that was another thing I knew. Just in case I couldn't get enough financial aid money, I had to stay, or like I had applied to schools that were around my house. That way I could take SEPTA, or commute,
Right.
or if my dad had to drive me, it had to be really close. That
Mhm.
way, just in case.
Mhm.
But I'm glad I don't have to
Mhm.
stay home and commute. I can actually move here.
So what about the services piece? What about the services?
One thing I think would help, because I am an academic advisor, would be more sort of multicultural training.
Okay.
One thing that always comes to my mind is the decision-making dynamics in a family. And advisors are always encouraged to get the student to make decisions on their own and to get family out of it. And I understand that to a degree, but I also think that many cultures, families make decisions
Right.
as a unit.
Absolutely.
And I think it's important, not just in advising, but in many of our services, to say, okay, what is the decision-making style?
Right.
And what are the obligations? What happens if a family member is sick? Is the student expected to go home, you know,
Mhm.
and being aware of those kinds of
Right.
things so that we're not using the same kind of, I don't know, WASB standard or whatever it
Yeah.
is, you know, to react to these various situations.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
So it sounds like you're saying multicultural training for advisors, for
advisors, for teachers,
Okay.
you know,
So
for
for faculty.
anyone who's basically, you know, dealing with the students.
right.
Yeah, you know, the athletic department.
Sure.
You know, at the Subaru actually has training for its employees in terms of what part of the country we're in. How do you sell a car? How is selling a car
Mhm.
to a Hispanic family different than to an Asian family? Different, and you know, there is going to be stereotyping, and that's a fine line. But it's also an awareness that the difference can be legit. That we don't have to force everyone to conform in terms of their dynamics to a particular model
Mhm.
that happens to be currently Villanova's.
And even, you know, kind of what I heard in what you were saying too is that it's also, it's regional too. So,
Yes.
you know,
Yes,
the cultural, even the culture of like a Latino in New Jersey might be very different than a Latino family
Even the
in
background.
Texas.
I mean,
Exactly,
how is a
absolutely.
Puerto Rican
Yes,
family going to be
exactly.
different than Mexican
Right.
American or Dominican?
Absolutely,
And that you get this socioeconomic status in it as well. So
certainly. Mhm.
I think you'd have to build more
Mhm.
awareness.
What kind of services would you all want to see? As students, what do you think would be good if,
Is there, I have no idea because I don't eat, is there Hispanic food available?
They have a fake Chipotle.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
so local, you mean? But that's local, but what about on campus?
I feel like that would be really cool if we had like
yeah.
a Hispanic cook or something to cook some nice food. Not nice food, but like some traditional
Yeah.
home food. Because sometimes I'm just like, Mom, like, can you tell Charlie to drive up here and give me some
Yeah.
food? Because the food is like completely, I don't know if they do it towards people's diets or something, but it's just lacking a lot of flavor.
Right.
I feel like. But I think like we're like as Hispanics, we're used to like our mom's different spices and seasonings and stuff like that. Yeah.
Right,
But definitely the food.
right. Food is huge. It's a huge part of your daily life. It's a huge part of culture. Absolutely. Yeah.
So I know we have like, we have pancakes every day for breakfast, pancakes and eggs. I know they have plátanos. Says that you never know, people like it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Like you're definitely kind of going along the lines of kind of like trying and stuff like that. And it's just this time period in like the student's life, it's almost like an initiative to kind of get them to be more open or trying new things. It's kind of like that would maybe be beneficial to other students who are say white or like.
Did any of you go to the One Book dinner? Did you go this year? Did you go to the One Book dinner? So do you know about it? So every year there's the One Book, and the speaker comes to campus, and they give a talk. And before the talk, the dining hall does a special dinner that's themed around the particular book. And so this year this year it was the Other Westmore, and the food in the dining hall was kind of two different types of cuisine. It was Baltimore food, so you had a lot of crab cakes. And I think like Old Bay fries and things like that. And then there was, because Westmore was from Baltimore, but his mother was also Jamaican, so they had a Jamaican station. And if you were in that dining hall, it was fascinating to see where people went and to eat, where the line was. What do you think? Where do you think the line was? The crab cakes. There was nobody in line for curried lamb or nothing. No, nobody was in line. So I wanted a crab cake. I wanted to try a crab cake, but I wasn't waiting in line, and I love curried food. So I loved Caribbean food. So I went there. But I think, it speaks to the point of we need to be encouraging people to to try new things, to eat new food. And that was shocking to me because every time I go to New York, like I have my restaurant that I want to go to get my curried goat. And so, and so in part, I wonder if some of the decisions, I don't know if this is the case, I wonder if it's also kind of fiscal. Oh, we know the diets of our, Villanova community, and we don't, we're also a very green campus, so we're trying not to, throw a lot of food away, so we don't want to cook food that people aren't going to eat. But how do we get people to try it? How do we get people to know that if you've never tried something before, how can you say you don't like it, right? And how do we, but also in doing so, in catering to the kind of the majority, who are we alienating? And if we know that these are going to be the demographic changes and where our region, our nation is going to be going, we got to start figuring this out.
It's not about international.
Oh,
students.
absolutely.
Sometimes, they're so homesick, and they're homesick for the food.
Yes.
As well as everything else.
Right. Yeah.
Now, I don't see no, I'm pretty sure there's also going to be restaurants around here that I know of. Unless you go into the city,
Right.
you'd have to take like, the train,
Right.
and there's always money. You can't use your good points.
Right. Yeah. So then maybe that's something. Maybe that's another service, right? Are there ways in which you could create partnerships with restaurants to come to campus? Are there ways in which we can have a Go Explore Philly Day where a train pass is comped so that you can go and try this? Is there a way in which we can have Nova Bucks set up to work at a local eatery?
Maybe just kind of like figure out a way where a food truck could come once a week and just kind of like pass by.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and just like
Pretty sure they would
sell.
like tacos.
Yeah.
Authentic
It's like an
tacos.
international food truck day.
Right. Yeah.
And like not only.
Apparently there was a big thing with food trucks. They tried to have food trucks a year ago, and there's like a whole legal issue. Yes.
Oh, there was, definitely.
Yeah,
Wait, what
which is
happened?
unfortunate. It's a lot of, when you have people come from outside come onto campus to sell something, there's a lot of kind of paperwork you have to fill out. And so I guess something particularly about the food work, yeah, the food and think how it's prepared, it was really difficult. But
You're right.
yeah, but I'm not saying that should deter us from trying something, right? I think there's ways in which to think creatively about that. So.
It just seems like that would it would kind of cut it to like not necessarily downsize it, but kind of cut it to the level that meets the needs.
Right,
of the,
sure,
of the
sure.
percentage.
Right. Meets our 7.5 plus some adventurous folks too.
You know, it would be fun. I think because in grade school, I remember we had International Day, and well, this was a project that we shouldn't, I don't think we did, but like, it was like every student had like a different country, and then you would have you would like report on your country, make a PowerPoint, and it'd be like up showing, and then every table was a different country. Like, so there was like the Asian countries, then you have like the Caribbean, like the Latino countries, and then like European countries as well. So like right now, so that would be like fun. Like if even like it was like people that maybe not restaurants, or maybe you can actually get people like from your family or something to come in. Maybe you're not like it's like get paid or something to do that. That'd be fun. And then it'd be like less of a company insurance kind of thing, or war or something like, I don't know, like what happened or something like that.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think there's ways to think creatively about it. I think that it's important, right? I mean, I think that's what I hear you all saying, is that it's important. It's an important way to make people feel welcome. It's an important way to food is a big part of culture, and so how can we figure this out, right? Not give up on it. So that's I thank you all for coming and for engaging in the conversation. So unless if there's anything else you want to comment on, but that's what I had.
That's the sixth question.
Yeah.
How is it an issue on campus that is just coming from recognizing my whiteness here, ignorance, but thinking of the fact that I don't know how often you might speak Spanish at home, but the fact that in Villanova so little of staff and faculty that speak Spanish, or if you want to speak Spanish, is a welcoming place to speak a language that's not like English all the time. Is that off-putting? Is that an issue, or is that just kind of like is that just America?
I don't know, because like I was talking to my mom the other day, I was like when I would come home back from break or something, because I don't call my parents every day. Like I don't have not that I don't have the time to, but sometimes it's just I forget or something like that because I'm hanging out with friends. But like I literally, like I feel like I'm forgetting my Spanish because I don't speak it as often anymore. Like in high school, I took Spanish classes that way I wouldn't forget it, and then I could learn it like formally because at home, depending on what country you're from, everyone speaks a different Spanish. So to learn more professional Spanish, I took it in high school that way, so I can become more professional in it and like take it. Like I don't know if this was true or not. I heard there was like a medical Spanish class. If there is that, that would be really cool. That way for people who take Spanish or like are nurses or doctors, like pre-med students that are taking Spanish. That way they can learn how to say like science. Like
Right,
they learn
scientific
science in
terms
Spanish.
and cult.
Because I could
right.
say like a whole bunch of different things, but like if I don't know how to say heart attack or all these other different words.
Or if you don't know the cultural
don't know-
ways in which, you know, to approach talking about a heart attack too, right? That might, that's,
That would be,
the context is just as important as the word sometimes.
I don't know if that was true if we have one or not. I wasn't sure.
I
My
don't know
friend,
that.
I don't think so. I didn't see it. Like a medical Spanish class.
Yeah, there is. It's Spanish
I think even maybe through nursing, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, there was one this semester, but I'm getting a minor in Spanish.
Okay.
So I mean, I wanted to keep my Spanish speaking skills alive. And I thought that would really kind of improve like a resume if I was looking
Yeah, that would
education. Like I just really like the idea of kind of speaking Spanish on campus. I know I definitely have my own friend groups and sometimes they would speak Spanish. I know I have my friend Natalia. I speak Spanish with her all the time, just to kind of just keep it like, it's more beneficial to me just because even though she knows it already, it kind of just helps me in kind of like real world applications. Not because right here on this campus you don't really encounter that many Spanish speaking people.
Right.
And even if they took Spanish, they probably aren't inclined to speak Spanish with you if they know they could just speak English.
Gotcha.
So.
But if there's some, like maybe if they're international Spanish speaking students, then it wouldn't really be beneficial for them to keep speaking Spanish.
Sure.
It'd be better if they spoke English with
Right.
everybody.
Right.
But then there's also some groups that just speak Spanish all the time, maybe like, for weekends. But like, because there's like a lot this year, like on South Campus, and you always see them speaking Spanish. But then maybe some people feel some type of way when people are speaking Spanish. Because maybe like, oh, they're talking about me, or like, you know what I mean? Like they come feel maybe like offended.
Right.
That's
Right.
what
They're not
you guys,
understanding.
like, you speak Spanish, they'd be like, what's he talking about me? And
Yeah.
they want to talk derogatory about everything else around them, where you don't feel comfortable because you feel people are.
They're like thinking of some kind of, they're looking at you speaking some kind
Then
of
it's
way.
kind of like a moral issue where it's kind of one side thinks, oh, you're talking about me. The other side is almost like, I want to just, make sure that my Spanish speaking skills doesn't die.
Right.
Kind of participate in my own culture.
Yeah.
And try to forget it.
I mean, I mean, that's exactly what happened with Native American tribes and the languages. I mean, there are languages that do not exist anymore because they were forced to speak English, right? I mean, you don't want to see, Spanish is pretty widespread, so at least right now I don't think it's in danger of going away, but still, but on a personal level, you don't want to lose your own cultural experience, your own cultural background. So, good question.